Well, it seems like so long ago, but Hurricane Dorian actually formed at the end of August last year. And on September 1st, as a Category 5 storm, it devastated the Bahamas. Then it weakened and lingered right along the Atlantic coast. Now we're getting a look at the final numbers compiled by the National Hurricane Center. And to break it down, here's our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb. Dr. Knabb, this was obviously one that will go down in history. This is that complete report that really gives us a sense of what that storm did.
Yeah, and for the big events like this with a lot of casualties, unfortunately, it takes a while to piece it all together and try to get the historical record right. Let's take a look at the numbers with regard to Dorian when it comes to the Bahamas, okay? 180 miles per hour. That was the max winds at its peak intensity, which unfortunately was at its initial landfall there in Elbow Cay in the Abacos. Strongest hurricane on record to strike the Bahamas. The pressure was 910 millibars. If that was a U.S. landfalling hurricane, that would be third lowest pressure on record in between Camille and Michael. The height of the storm surge, this is the number that gets me the most, 20 feet or more above normally dry ground was the salt water on top of portions of Great Abaco and Grand Bahama. It was both islands, especially the eastern part of Grand Bahama, that got the water that high. And look at this, 3 days, at least 3 days of winds of at least tropical storm force in the Abacos, a slow-moving Category 5. I can't think of too many weather events that are worse than that when it happens over a populated area. At least 200 fatalities reported by the Bahamas health minister and $3.5 billion of damage, guys. And it was terrible. And we had impacts in the U.S., though.
Yeah, the thing we thought about with that storm, listen, the Bahamas aren't geographically that far from the east coast of Florida. So, this should be a wake-up call to people that live in vulnerable coastal communities. Something like that could happen to you. We maybe just got lucky in South Florida. It didn't.
We absolutely did. Can you imagine a stalled Category 5 over South or Central Florida? It would be an immense disaster. Now, on the east coast of Florida, the strongest winds we got were 70 miles an hour, but it was a Category 2 hurricane when it made landfall in North Carolina. It was mostly Category 1 winds on land, but we had a storm surge inundation of 7 feet above normally dry ground there on Hatteras Island. We did lose people. We had 4 indirect fatalities here in the U.S. and 21 tornadoes in North and South Carolina. So it was a $1.5 billion storm, and we flew a lot of planes into it too. 48 missions flown by the hurricane hunters. It was an amazing event, guys.
Yeah, it was an incredible storm. And as you mentioned, one of the biggest issues with Hurricane Dorian was how slow it moved at such a high intensity while it moved over the Bahamas. Is this a sign of things to come with these major hurricanes as a new study explores the relationship between our warming climate and tropical systems? Joining us now to dive deeper into the subject is Professor Carrie Emanuel with MIT. Professor Emanuel, let's start with what you're most confident about that will change with hurricanes in the years and the decades to come.
Well, we're very confident that a given hurricane is likely to produce more rain. The physics behind that is very simple. We've thought that for decades now. We're beginning to see it in the data. That's the thing we're most confident of. And we're also fairly confident now that we're going to see a greater incidence of the very high category hurricanes like Dorian.
Carrie, what concerns you more? Increasing water problems from sea level rise, greater rain rates, or that hurricanes might be getting more intense? Because there's a lot of focus on the intensity, but even without changes in intensity, the water problems could get worse.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And in fact, water is the big killer in hurricanes most of the time. And either from storm surges, like we were just talking about, or from torrential rains, as in Hurricane Harvey. And the rains go up because sea level is going up and because storms are going to be more intense and possibly larger in diameter. Surges are likely to get worse as well. Those are the main concerns.
What about when it comes to speed of these tropical systems? We've seen these slow-moving storms have catastrophic consequences. Harvey, Florence, Dorian. What do we know about the future speed of hurricanes?
Well, this is a subject of very active research, and there is some indication from historical data that we're beginning to see a slowdown in storms. Model predictions are a bit more mixed. It's probably going to be faster in some parts of the world and slower in the others. But I think the synopsis there is that we still have a lot of work to do on that issue.
You know, we look at a lot of these stats, and I think a lot of them are worrisome. Were there any positives that were found in something that would maybe be beneficial to us when it comes to hurricanes?
Well, I think when you look around the world, one thing that we see is that there's not much change predicted for storms in vast territories of the southern hemisphere, particularly the South Pacific. Not much evidence of a lot of change there. South Indian, maybe a little bit more. So if you're in those regions, maybe the news isn't so bad. Elsewhere, it's really going to depend on exactly where you are. So, for example, we do all see a shift of storms toward the north, and that will spare places further south.
Well, Professor Kerry Emanuel.
Professor Kerry Emanuel joining us this evening. Thanks so much for that. We really appreciate you talking to us tonight. Fascinating stuff, that is for sure. And we hope that you can stick around here on Weather Underground. We have more fascinating stuff to show you and a sight to behold in the Pacific Ocean. Bioluminescence, a surfer illuminated by the ocean. How does it happen? A marine expert joins us when we return.